The Cincinnati Bengals had their chances to win on Sunday in Kansas City, but made one too many mistakes. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the everydayers who are sticking it out even after a tough loss in Arrowhead. And shout out to the everydayers out there, the first listeners, everyone who makes us part of their routine. If you're new, of course, you can subscribe. I think the arrow is pointing up for the Cincinnati Bengals the rest of the season. It's not always going to feel like this. We will be there for you either way. This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by Gametime. They can save you $20 on tickets on your first purchase when you use promo code Locked On NFL in the Gametime app. And that was a seizing defeat from the jaws of victory game, which is not something I thought I would be saying after the Bengals traveled to Arrowhead, but very characteristic of some of the Bengals' previous performances in contests between these teams in a lot of ways, where it's coming down to a play here, a play there, a very tight game that comes down to a play or two in the end over the course of the game.
Welcome to the best rivalry in the NFL. That's what it is. And that's what we saw today. And it was a reminder to everyone that was the case. And yeah, it's a heck of a game that the Bengals shoulda, coulda, woulda won. But for every good thing that we're going to discuss, there's a bad thing on the other end. For as good as Joe Burrow played, he had a fumble that went for 6 the other way. For as good as Evan McPherson was, the missed extra point, which really didn't hurt them because then the Chiefs went for it. I've seen some people blame the extra point. The extra point actually didn't matter at all. But looking at it, the Bengals made a ton of plays today, and they made a ton of mistakes. And when you do that and you leave it up to a judgment call at 4th and 16, right, and it's close, sometimes you're going to get that call, sometimes you won't. And the Chiefs got that call today, and it feels like every time it's Bengals Chiefs, it comes down to 1 or 2 plays like you mentioned. That's why I think it's the best rivalry. I do. I mean, there was never a moment in this game from the start where I thought, oh, the Chiefs are going to run away with this, or, oh, the Bengals are just going to run away with this. And anytime one team punched, the other team counterpunched, and the Bengals did have a few chances to really take control, which I'm sure we'll get to, and they didn't. And the Chiefs deserve credit for that, for hanging around. The Bengals, that's part of the mistakes that I mentioned. And you look up and the Bengals are 0-2 for a third straight year. But I will say it does feel different. It doesn't look different in the standings. But today, 7 days after what happened last Sunday, certainly feels different with the how. And sometimes the how does matter. And so they played much better. Like this Bengals team, if they played like this last week, they would have beat the Patriots by 20. Instead, we're talking about a team that's 0-2 and is going into a must-win on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, there are a number of positives that we can get to and we will get to, but I have a hard time after a loss starting that way, even though I'd really like to. I'd like to, go to silver linings right away, but there's a reason they're called silver linings. The cloud is gray and dark and depressing, and then you get to the silver linings on the outside, and that's like the one thing that you can grasp onto if you're looking for hope. So we will get there. And there is a lot of good in this game, but when you list out the mistakes the Bengals made, the list is just a little bit too long. Not that the Chiefs played a clean game of football, but from the end of the game to the start of the game, there are drops that really hurt this team. There are penalties that really hurt this team. There were red zone issues, settling for field goals early, that really hurt this team. There were not as many tackling issues this week. Give them credit for that, but injuries to the interior defensive line and then playing a lot of J. Tufele and Zach Carter because that's all you have left. And those guys getting bodied, unfortunately, in the run game hurt you in this game. And the big ones that stick with me the most, James, are actually drops and the red zone issues. Those are the two that I am circling the most because both and PFF charted 3 drops. I'm not sure where the third one was, but both of the crucial drops in this game. Mike Gesicki drops a pass that clearly can go for a first down. Andre Yosevach drops a pass. It's not a perfect pass, but should have gone for a first down. It's, again, one of those plays you need to make. It's a clean drop. The ball wasn't deflected. It wasn't anything like last week with Tanner Hudson where the ball is deflected. And those 2 drops directly lead to Kansas City getting off the field or Kansas City getting points off of a Joe Burrow turnover. And Joe Burrow is behind the sticks and he's scrambling on a third down on that fumble that goes for 6. And then on the last drive of the game with the Yosevach drop, you get Joe again unaware on third and down of a slot pressure coming from Jamar Chase's isolated side of the field. And you're not in either of those situations if you stay ahead of the sticks, because the Bengals offense in this game was actually fine when they were ahead of the sticks. But then when they got to 2nd and 10, or they had some penalties that put them even in worse situations than that, that's when things started to get hard for them. It started to go off the rails for them. And both teams were really bad in 3rd and longs in this game. The Bengals and the Chiefs both, I think, were 0 in 3rd and longs. But those drops directly led to Kansas City stops or Kansas City points. And that's one huge bullet point for me if you're talking about missed opportunities. And the other one is those red zone drives that they settle for field goals. I would say probably half of Joe Burrow's incomplete passes today came on passes into the end zone in the red zone. One of them, a play that he could have kept it and scrambled. Instead, he throws it and goes on Trent Norman's face mask. Maybe T. Higgins catches that ball. Maybe Trent Norman could have made a different play to catch that ball. But those kind of missed opportunities really hurt because they're 4-point plays in some cases, and in other cases, they're even bigger point swings because of plays you left on the field for unforced error entirely.
Well, yeah, that's it. Andre Yosevach has 2 touchdowns and then also has the drop. Mike Gesicki is their leading receiver and then has the drop.
Had a good game, but had the drop.
But that's it. Joe Burrow, much better this week. But that's the theme. It wasn't. You don't have to play perfect, and you're never going to play perfect against the Chiefs. But you can't have all of those things happen, and they all happened, and they still had a shot. And that's what's tough is. It felt like the offense needed to punch one more in. And whether that's just wasting more time and getting another field goal, or whether it's, heck, you mentioned the drops. The Jamar Chase penalty is huge. I mean, that takes you from a 3rd and 7 to a 3rd and 22. You have a real shot at picking up that 3rd and 7. 3rd and 22, there's 0 shot. You're not even trying to. You're just trying to get back into field goal range. Like, what a swing there that is, where you're just hoping to get the field goal. And obviously you did. And obviously you take the lead there again, 25-23. But there were so many things like that changed momentum. And the Bengals responded the right way. Heck, the defense, it felt like they were going to respond with the stop, and they didn't. But when you leave it up to, when all of those things happen that you just mentioned, when you struggle in the red zone, when you have drops, the margin for error is already pretty damn thin. And so then you combine that with now you're asking a 7th round rookie to go up there and make a play. And a lot of people probably felt like he made that play, that he went straight up and tried to make – and that's what's tough is maybe that gets called 20% of the time. But what if this was one of those 20% and now you're 0-2? And if you make one of those other plays, maybe it doesn't come down to a 4th and 16 where it's honestly a borderline Hail Mary from Patrick Mahomes where he rolls out. Trey Hendrickson's given chase, flushes him out of the pocket. Trey Hendrickson, man, a bright spot in this game. But yeah, it's shoulda, coulda, woulda, and you come up just a tad short. I think that's the theme. Let's get to more. There are so many things we have to get to when it comes to the 0-2 Bengals losing 26-25. We will do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million. That's 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the best way to get on the action in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And they put their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun you're going to have playing daily fantasy sports. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is also sponsored by DoorDash. Football's back. We're getting ready for week 3 here after the Bengals had an 0-2 start. And if you're anything like me, food can cheer you up after a game like that. Food can comfort you. It can soothe the soul. And DoorDash gives you that option to get that food delivered to you without having to put in the extra effort that can sometimes feel hard when you've just suffered an emotionally taxing defeat from your favorite football team. Or maybe you're going over to your buddy's house next week to watch the Bengals on Monday Night Football and you forgot to bring your portion for the potluck. DoorDash can be there for you and get that food to you when you need it. You can use promo code LOCKEDFALL24. You'll get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 on your first order with DoorDash. That's a limited time offer. Terms apply. The promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash is your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order all of your game day favorites. Must be 21 plus to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol only available in select markets.
All right, Jake, let's continue the conversation. Let's dive into Joe Burrow a little bit more because I think he checked a lot of the boxes that you were hoping he would check. The 47-yarder to Jermaine Burton, his best throw of the year, or one of them. The explosive play to Mike Gesicki on 4th down to start the game, the 37-yarder. It's like, oh, man, this offense is rolling. Obviously, they had to settle for a field goal there. But and he was as frustrated as I've seen him in a long time, probably since the Houston loss. I don't want to go back too far. He's pretty frustrated after that loss last year, but pretty damn frustrated after the game. But this was also a huge step in the right direction for Joe Burrow.
Did you see the helmet slam?
I did not. What? When did he slam his helmet?
After the DPI call, I believe.
You believe?
I believe it was I know he slammed his helmet. I believe it was after the DPI call on Dejon Anthony at the end of the game.
Gotcha.
I don't remember exactly when it was. I'm pretty sure that's when it was.
I know Jamar slammed his. I saw that one. I did not see Joe slam his.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
He was very unhappy. He thought that the game was won. Instead, the game was lost in a flash before his eyes. But regardless of his frustration, we can talk about the way he played and the way the offense looked. We can talk both about Burrow, and then we can transition to some of the things we talked about in the preview that came to fruition in this game in terms of offensive adjustments. But
well, real quick, before we get to Burrow, now that you brought it up, what did you think of the DPI?
I initially thought it was a terrible call.
Yeah. I get why. I think a lot of people are going to be there. Honestly.
And then I watched it in slow motion, and then you get it. But that's in slow motion. The initial look, when I watched it live, it's bang, bang. Dejon Anthony jumps, I think, a split second before Rashee Rice jumps and is just drifting slightly forward, trying to make a play on the ball, and Rashee Rice jumps into him because he's jumping forward. To me, I don't think that is always called. Certainly in a Hail Mary situation, if that's 20 more yards downfield on the last play of the game, there's a 0% chance that call happens, because that happens on every single Hail Mary that has ever been hailed, right, in NFL football. But to me, you can make a very compelling argument that it's a 50-50 ball, that Dejon Anthony has just as much a right to that space as Rashee Rice does, and Rashee Rice actually initiates the contact. But the way it looks to the official who throws a flag is Dejon's playing through the back of the receiver, trying to make a play on the ball. And if you play through the back of the receiver, that is DPI, even if you are making a play on the ball. So I hated it when I saw it, and I still don't like it in a 4th and 16 where Patrick Mahomes is outside of the pocket and it's a duck. And that's part of probably why the timing is off. Like, the ball is wobbling. It's not a clean throw from Mahomes. It's not a good throw from Mahomes, and it bails them out. So definitely don't like it. And I'm not unambiguous about my feelings about it, but also the more time has passed and, seeing replays, I can understand the call a little bit more.
Yeah. Like that's my my feeling. And I think that was Zach's after the game as well. And in the moment, I'm sure if Joe did slam, if that was when he did it and slammed his helmet, then I'm sure a lot of people that are listening, watching, did the exact same thing and were really frustrated because it's such a close, subjective call. And you have this tight, really close game that's been back and forth.
And they haven't really been calling that kind of stuff.
And then it gets called.
Yeah.
And it decides because then it's game over. Like everybody knew then how it ends.
Yep.
And I hate that. It's like the Super Bowl 57, right? Super Bowl 57 against the Eagles when that happened, right? Like even if it is the right call, it still sucks in that moment because then that's just kind of it.
Even go back to the AFC Championship game, the Joseph Osai play out of bounds. Like it's a very similar feeling, which is part of why it's so frustrating to be right there. And that wasn't a stop. This was a stop. This was game over. We win. Instead, it was game over. We lose in the throw of a flag that is not totally unambiguous.
Yeah. By the way, I do mean Super Bowl 57 Eagles Chiefs, just for those wondering, because I could feel people be like, no, I meant that, like, because it ended on the PI, basically. That being said, yeah, I think it's like 1 out of 5 it gets called, if I had to guess. And that 1 out of 5 got called. We didn't hear from Dejon Anthony after. Obviously, he's trying to go up and make a play and make sure that Rice doesn't come down with it. But all right, let's get to Burrow.
I guess, like, I don't know what else Dejon Anthony's supposed to do there. If he tries to wait for Rashee Rice to make the play on the ball, he has no shot. And so you need to be in better position, you can argue, but he times it pretty well. He gets his hand on the ball first, right? And so, yeah, it's just really close. And it's really too bad that such a close game comes down to that call.
And it looked awkward, I think, in the moment, like the bangness of that play. Like, it's like, oh, well, Rice is up and like he's getting – and it was real easy to react, I think, if you're the official and say, oh, it was interference, even though it was like literally the definition of a bang play.
And you never see it called on Hail Marys. And that's the whole situational thing on 4th downs, like 4th and longs, desperation play. And that's really what it was. So that makes it really frustrating. But we were talking about Joe Burrow, James, and I think you have to be encouraged by the way he played in this game. I think that, again, relatively mistake-free throwing the ball. I am worried about ball security. That's now 2 fumbles, plus another one on a mishandled snap, plus one that was very nearly a fumble last week where he hits the ground first. And so I'm a little bit worried about ball security for Joe Burrow in terms of holding onto the football when he's taking contact. But I thought he looked significantly better. I don't think he looked 100%. I think it was a step in the right direction, but to me was still a little bit hurried in terms of dropping his eyes and escaping the pocket a couple of times, a couple of those leading to sacks. I thought the accuracy is not as consistent as we're used to from Burrow, but still was mostly good enough. Like I said, suffered 2 drops in this game. His adjusted completion percentage, according to PFF, 81.3% with 3 drops that they recorded. And I don't know if that even counts Trent Irwin's ball off the face mask. So certainly played pretty well, I thought. And it's a huge step in the right direction, but I do not think yet that we've seen Joe Burrow at full strength. Certainly the best we've seen of him week 2, perhaps in his career, or at least a long time.
Yeah, maybe because he played like crap week 2, 21. No, week 2 as a rookie, he was awesome. But anyways,
so you got one. Okay, go back to
that Thursday night. Yeah. No, but I was thinking like, all right, was he? Anyways, clearly we've watched too much Joe Burrow. No, far from perfect. I'm not super worried about the ball security. You just got to tuck it. Like if you're gonna make the decision to run, because he just had it here. And there's a reason running backs don't run it with 2 hands on it.
It was tucked.
Are you sure?
Yeah, pretty sure. I saw it tucked, and I saw it come out when it was tucked away.
Gotcha.
Right arm.
Well, were the other ones tucked?
I don't recall.
You know what I'm saying? Like this might just be an out. I don't want to go there yet.
I'm not trying to sound like too loud of an alarm bell. It's just something now that's like, it's 2 weeks. He's had some issues putting the ball on the ground. This has been an issue for him before the wrist injury as well that I've pointed out as something to clean up. And so it's just something I'm keeping an eye
on. I think, well, let's continue with Joe Burrow. We have a lot to get to other than Joe Burrow. But I'll share one more thought on Joe Burrow, and then we'll get to everything else coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. It is Bengals and Commanders Monday Night Football. Maybe you made the trip out and used Game Time. Hopefully you did, because if you're a Locked On Bengals listener and you came to this game, well, you got to use Game Time. Game Time is the app that is going to make your life easier when you're trying to go to any of your favorite live events, whether it's concerts, whether it's Bengals games, whether you're trying to catch the Bengals on the road or at home for Monday Night Football. Maybe you're making the decision right now about going to the Bengals Monday night game. Well, Game Time has everything you need to make it a smooth process of getting tickets, from Game Time picks that filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals, to their all-in pricing, the fact that they have a panoramic view of your seat so you know exactly what you're going to get for your money. Take advantage of it all right now by downloading the Game Time app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, Locked On NFL, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, real quick on Joe Burrow. It does feel like over the past 2 weeks he's had to, and I think this is like the pocket feel. He's been running like a ton, and it worked. It worked today on a key third down where he had to. You're going up against Chris Jones. I thought overall they held up pretty darn well, considering how often they were throwing the ball. And yet what we are seeing him try to run, think about running, pulling it down. And I think that's part of it, is if you do that more, there's going to be hands in there. He's so good, I think, at holding the ball in the pocket and avoiding and moving, like when he's at his best, and keeping his eyes downfield and keeping two hands on the ball. But yeah, I think that might be part of it, is he is still getting rushed a little bit, is wanting to move, wanting to get out of the pocket. And so the ball security thing might be an impact of him tucking it or not tucking it early, but pulling it down, dropping his eyes, and seeing something that might not necessarily be there. But overall, I think it was a step in the right direction for him. And then offensive line-wise, I mean, when you're dealing with Chris Jones, I thought they held up pretty darn well, especially with the noise as well. One false start, and I think one holding. Other than that, this offensive line held up well.
Yeah, in terms of penalties, the Bengals had, I think, all of them on the offensive side of the ball. Trent Brown had a false start early in the game. Yeah, obviously Dejan. Sorry. Of course. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Actually, what
I think everyone wants to forget that one.
What happened is I confused the Chiefs had 4 penalties. The Bengals had 9, I think, and I confused that. Anyway, Orlando Brown did have a holding penalty. We had the delay of game on Joe Burrow going into the half that nobody cares about. Trent Norman had the OPI. Jamar Chase had his penalty. I want to talk a little bit about the offensive structural changes we saw this week. After I agree with you that the protection was really, really good this week, the only standout from a negative perspective to me was Cordell Volson, but he's dealing with Chris Jones, and I think whoever's dealing with Chris Jones for most of the day is going to suffer for that. I thought it was a bounce-back game for Trent Brown for the most part, especially as a pass blocker. There's one rep on Andre Josevach's second touchdown of the game where he ends up doing a great job against Chris Jones, and Chris Jones gives up on the play on a 4th down. You don't see Chris Jones give up very often, but when Trent has his hands on you, I guess, and you have a little bit of help from Alex Kappa coming over afterwards, I guess you're okay giving up if you're Chris Jones on that play. So that was a pretty impressive rep for Trent Brown that stood out. Also on that play, Eric All was more or less one-on-one, a little bit of chip help against George Karlaftis, and he held up. Really great game for Eric All. And some of the things we talked about in our game preview, James, were could they get anything out of Jermaine Burton in this game on offense, and would they go to more 12 personnel? Answer to those questions are yes to more 12 personnel and yes to Jermaine Burton. And I think that is encouraging. The tight ends in this game, James, had I don't know if you would have guessed this. Who would you think had the most snaps or if you had to rank from most to least snaps for tight ends in this game? How would you guess?
I would say, honestly, I think Eric All played the most.
He had the same amount of snaps as Drew Sample, both of those guys at 33, Mike Gesicki at 30.
Okay.
So pretty even split, but 64 snaps of offense for the Bengals. They also had an extra tackle out there for apparently 5 plays. We've got Cody Ford on the field for 5 plays here, according to PFF's initial charting. And that means they had at least 30 plays, I think, or something like that is how the math will work out with 2 tight ends on the field. I'm not sure exactly how the math will work out, but I'm pretty sure they had a fair bit of 12 personnel. They ran some 13 personnel in this game. They ran some heavy sets with the extra linemen in this game. They had a really cool shotgun formation with Drew Sample at fullback in the shotgun in front of Chase Brown. And those were really effective runs. And so I thought the adjustments from week 1 to week 2, based on the personnel available to the Bengals, based on where they thought they could get some advantages in this game, was really encouraging to see. On top of that, you get a good pass protecting performance from this offensive line. The only thing that I'm left really griping about, really, like big picture, is the usage of Zach Moss and Chase Brown.
Yep.
It's still a little bit too uneven. Let's get that closer to even. I know they're giving Chase the designer runs still, and they're making it easier on him, just like they did last year. They're giving him some of the easier reads and some of the easier plays, but he looks good. And so it would be nice to see that get even out a little bit if they can. But by and large, pretty pleased with the offensive coaching adjustments this week. And let's wrap up thoughts there and then praise this defense, because I have a lot of nice things to say about the defense as well.
Well, yeah, let's just go to the defense, because we're going to have plenty of time to reflect even more on both sides of the ball moving forward. But yeah, the defense, look, early on, I was like, man, they're not going to be able to stop these guys at all. And to their credit, they found ways to do it. And Trey Hendrickson played his tail off with what he did. Last I checked, I'm going to check again, but he had 4 tackles, 2 for loss. Yeah, 3 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, just played his tail off.
Drew multiple penalties. I think 3 out of the 4 Chiefs penalties were guys trying to block him.
Yeah, and really tried to wreck the game and came darn near close to it, right? And in that they force the Chiefs to punt with just over 7 minutes to go. I think it was like 7:08 to go. And Trey Hendrickson's sack is what put them behind the sticks to do it, right? Yep. And you're like, all right, here's the chance. Here's the chance to go score a touchdown and end this game. And Trey put them in that position. So that's one. The ability to force turnovers. And even though you had given up 10 first downs, just as many yards, you look up and the Bengals had the lead at halftime, and they had only given up 10 points. And as weird as it felt defensively, they were in it, and they had only given up 10. And you're like, all right. And just responding the right way to the Rashee Rice touchdown, Cam Taylor-Britt didn't think the ball was going there. That's what happened. He hesitated. And if you notice, he slows down, doesn't think the ball is going there. And if he doesn't do that, that doesn't happen.
He slows down and he misses the ball by a fingertip anyway. Like, he's right there. And it was too bad that he slowed down.
Yeah. So there was a lot of good, though, overall, considering the situation. I mean, let me look real quick at rushing yards. I mean, they averaged 4.7 a carry and had 150 yards rushing total, but 29 of those was Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy had 5. Pacheco 90 yards. I would have taken Isaiah Pacheco at 90 yards to start the game. I don't know about you. I would have been like, all right, I'm okay with that.
The run D is still a problem, and it's not getting better. But considering what they're dealing with,
that's what I mean.
The issues this week and the mismatch this week, like, that is kind of what you expected. The tackling was night and day. They still had some missed tackles, but it wasn't like it was, 2-yard gain turns into 20-yard gain because of missed tackles this week. They didn't give up those explosives really at all. The only explosive play of the game is that Rashee Rice touchdown. The Cam Taylor-Britt is right there and very close to breaking up. But the Chiefs were really good at keeping drives alive and getting down the field, if not for turnovers. But you have to credit the Bengals for creating those turnovers. 2 great interceptions of Patrick Mahomes, including perhaps the interception of the year, the Odell Beckham Jr.ing of the ball by Cam Taylor-Britt on a ball intended for the guy he specifically went out of his way to trash talk, is Xavier Worthy, who didn't do a whole lot in this game. Did he even have a catch? Did Xavier Worthy? He did have 2 catches for 17 yards. Pretty quiet day for Worthy, and an incredible play for Cam Taylor-Britt there, making more than up for his touchdown. I think the touchdown is the only significant blemish of the day for Cam Taylor-Britt in coverage. PFF had him giving up, in fact, 2 catches on 4 targets. And the one that wasn't the 44-yard touchdown was just a 6-yard pass. In addition to that, he had the pick. Trey Hendrickson, you mentioned it, awesome game, made the Chiefs make a fourth quarter change at left tackle late in the game. They had seen enough from Kingsley Suamataia, who is getting his lunch stolen repeatedly by the bully and Trey Hendrickson. Should have made the game-winning play in drawing the illegal hands to the face penalty. Akeem Davis-Gaither also in limited snaps, awesome interception, and then makes a beautiful stop on a little screen play to get the Chiefs to a third down. In general, it was a much better performance from this defense. The Chiefs averaging under 5 yards per play overall. Patrick Mahomes had a characteristically, I would say at this point against the Bengals, pretty bad day throwing the football. And you credit Lou's crew for cooking up a good game plan here. The secondary, I thought, played a pretty good football game overall. And there are too many mistakes, obviously, but the defense, I'm not blaming too much for this one. I'm just worried about BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins. Both of those guys, hamstring injuries, both of those guys declared out, did not return, and they are very perilously thin now at defensive tackle.
Yep, that is the major concern. You have an extra day before the Monday night game, and so we'll have to monitor both guys. And I assume I'll predict that Zach Taylor on Monday will say, we'll take it day to day, with those guys and not say much, not give us much, because the Bengals, they're back tomorrow, and then Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then they'll pick things up from a game plan standpoint on Thursday. So a lot of treatment, a lot of lick your wounds, and hopefully those wounds for Hill and Rankins aren't too bad. Because, hey, by the way, Pratt got called for the forced fumble. I think Rankins did. I think Rankins is the one that
Rankins raked it out. Pratt might have been involved there at the end. I initially tweeted Rankins. People were in my replies telling me I was wrong. I deleted it. I shouldn't have deleted it. I was right. I saw it right the first time. I'm pretty sure it was Rankins. They got me. They got me, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes the mob on the internet convinces you of things. It gaslights you.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, it's crazy. It's crazy that they were this close, and 1-1 would have felt a heck of a lot better. I feel like these vibes would have been much, much different. But they're 0-2, Jake, for a third straight year. Yeah, unbelievable. 0-2.
A very different feel this year for me. It sucks. That's a gut punch loss. There's nothing that feels good about this game, but I do think the arrow is pointing up. If you had told me going into this game that you hold the Chiefs under 5 yards per play to 1 of 8 on third downs, you outpossess the Chiefs, you win the turnover battle by +2, I would have thought that things are going pretty well for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they were. And they were self-inflicted issues, I think, for the most part, that cost them the game, because I keep coming back to those drops and those missed opportunities from this offense in this game. And of course, the penalties on defense that cost them weren't great either. But a lot of self-inflicted stuff that I think they can recover from, that I think they can get better from. T. Higgins making some progress pregame today. We'll see how he does this week. And the quality of competition dropping off a little bit here, as well as the Bengals get ready for their first primetime game of the year. And we will get there. We will shift our attention there soon enough. We will have to watch the tape and come back with some tape-informed takeaways from this game. We will have that for you here in the near future on Locked On Bengals. Until then, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.